data we try to forecast in the econometrics part. So we forecasted binary data, our logistic regression, our classification. We forecasted our nominal data with nominal regression. We forecasted also ordinal data. We had an example with our rankings of the companies like triple A, triple B, and so on and so forth. And here we work with time series data. There is a very special type of data, is a panel data, where you have both a cross-sectional data and a time series data. Say you analyze, you have several branches of stores, like Auchan here, Auchan there, and you have weekly data. So you have cross-sectional data from one store to another store, but you also have a time series component because you have like monthly data. You have like graduating data and school data. That's not interesting. Let's have a look at the time series data. So time series data, it sounds very simple, but the problem is the time series data has very different forms and very different patterns. So if we take gross national product, for most of the economies, it's increasing all the time. There are some bumps in their national product if they have some crisis, but typically it is increasing just from the very long past up to their current days. What is special about this type of data is that we have some seasonalities. So gross national product, it depends on the consumption behavior of the people and on the production activities. If they're in summer, they produce, say, a lot of different stuff, then we have a jump in the gross national product. If they don't produce anything, say in January or at the beginning of the year, then we have a drop down in their gross national product. So it has some permanent trend, but there is still some seasonality around this gross national product, which is linked to the consumer behavior of the people. Then we also might have, so here we have a trend and we have some systematic behavior around the trend. We might also have a trend without a systematic behavior. So the DAX index is their financial index of of Germany. So it contains their prices for their 30 largest companies in Germany. There's also some kind of trend, but we see that this variation around the trend is completely random. So there is no seasonality, there is no specific pattern. There is some upward trend, and this upward trend just is influenced by some random fluctuations around that. What is even more embarrassing about this index is that from time to time we have some drop downs which are very unsystematic and which are difficult to forecast. For example, everything is perfect up to 2006, and we have a drop down for some reason which is impossible to forecast. Then we have again an increase, then we have some stable behavior, and then everything goes down. So there are some strange changes in the pattern which are difficult to forecast and which are difficult to capture. So there's a trend, there's some random component, and there are some breaks in the trend. Then we might have something like this. So it is different from what we have out there. We have some seasonal pattern. It's unemployment rate. It also depends on the period of the year. So we have some seasonal pattern. We have all the time those spikes here. So there are more unemployment, say, in the summer months and so on and so forth. But there are also some breaks in the trend which characterize the microeconomic situation in the country. So everything goes up, unemployment rate increases with seasonal pattern, then it goes down, up, down, and so on and so forth. And finally, we might have something like this. Those are the returns of the DAX index, log returns. We see we don't have any trend. Everything provides simply around zero. There is no seasonal pattern. There is just some noise in some sense. However, there is something special that we can try to model. For example, here the variation is very small. So the return varies here between minus 2% and 2%. And there is some crisis period where the variation is much higher. So there is something what is different in the previous time series, but what one can try to model with some statistical mathematical tools. So time series might have completely different behavior, and it depends on the structure of the time series what kind of model we do apply. So let us now just start with the very basic stuff what we try to focus. If you have cross-sectional data, then typically, say, regression model or regression trees and neural network, whatever, we have some function which we have estimated. Say our regression model is over here, so we have the estimated betas in there. We plug in new observations for x's from x1 to xk, and we compute a forecast for the new value of y. So it's very, very straightforward. Estimated functions. So first we have to estimate the model, then we apply new data and get y. If we have a time series, we have much more possibilities what we can do there. First, we can have one-step ahead forecast, so we forecast the sales for the next week. But we also can have a multi-step ahead forecast. We can forecast the sales in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, in 5 weeks, and so on and so forth. So our forecast is for the time period T plus H, where H takes some values from 1 to 10. So it is clear that the forecast for the next week is going to be more precise, because we have just 1 week of data or 1 period where some data is missing, where you have some randomness. If you forecast for 2 weeks, there are 2 weeks in between. There are much more possibilities that something might happen what influences sales. There are more randomness, and our forecast is going to be less precise. If you forecast for 3 weeks, there are even more randomness. The forecast is even more imprecise, and so on and so forth. So the longer the forecasting horizon is, the longer its age, or the larger its age, the more imprecise is going to be formed. So it is intuitively correct, and we will see later on that it's also mathematically like that. So there is more randomness in there. If you have a longer period, there is more randomness in there, and the more imprecise is going to be our forecast. So what happens up here? That's what we have done in our econometric part. In our econometric part, we had some kind of axis. We did some feature engineering, some variable importance measurement, and so on and so forth. So we had some axes. We believe those axes have some impact on our life. So it was pretty simple. In the modeling step, we just tried to find the relevant features in our model. If you have a time series data, it's slightly different. Because in the time series data, you try to exploit the historical data. So on the right-hand side in the model, we have the current sales, last week's sales, sales 2 weeks ago, and so on and so forth. And you let all those historical sales to influence the future sales. So you don't really do any feature engineering, because you have historical data and you believe those should influence the current value of the sales. The question is how to find the function f. So this is an important part. In the regression part, or like in the classical cross-sectional data, if you talk about regression, f is fixed. So it is a linear model. So we believe that we have beta times x1, beta 2 times x2, and so on and so forth. So the form is fixed. We estimate the parameters, and that's fine. So what we are interested in here is to find suitable axes. So it's more important to find relevant axes in cross-sectional modeling than to find the function f. This function f is fixed by the model values. If you talk about time series data, then the axes or the expansion variables being given. Last week's sales, this week's sales, 2 weeks ago sales, and so on and so forth. So you are not looking for the expansion variables because those are given. What you are looking at, or what you are searching for, is the function f. How to link this historical data to the current value of the process. So it is a slightly different paradigm because you are looking not for axis, you're looking for the function f. In the cross-sectional data, it's the other way around. Typically, you have some function f which specifies your model, and you're looking for suitable, economically reasonable axis on the right-hand side. Now, what we are trying to do intuitively here, what we try to do, we try to model the memory. So if you have a time series, historical data, historical observation for the sales, then with this function f, we try to model the memory of the process. So how the past values influence the current value of the sales, for example. So if this is, for example, sales 2 weeks ago, the function f tells us how those sales 2 weeks ago are going to influence the today's sales. So what is the strength of the memory in their variable sales in some sense? 1 week memory, so what do you remember from the last week, what do you remember from the 2 weeks ago, and so on and so forth. So with the function f, we try to model the memory of the process. So the whole time series modeling is about modeling the memory in some sense. The way we model this memory is typically specified by these box changes. So they developed a principle how to model the memory, and we'll discuss when we talk about Arduino processes. So here it's about memory, here it's about like looking for suitable axes which might influence our life. Now, the third class of forecasting, it is the so-called judgmental forecasts. Typically, it's also used for new or rare events. An example, we had last year a project with a company, and this company produces engines, large engines. We worked with their department of spare parts. So they were responsible for having sufficient number of spare parts in storage, so they can repair the old engines, so they can produce the old engines, and so on and so forth. The company is very old, and there are plenty of ladies who are like 60, almost 70 years old, and they had simply experience. So they hadn't used any special software to say that we need 2 types of this part, like we need 11 items of that part. They knew simply from their experience. They worked for the company for 40 years. And their forecasts were really almost perfect, just because of the experience. Now, all those ladies, they really retired because there was some, so they employed, like 40 years ago, there was really a very boom in the company. They employed many people, and now most of those people, they're going to retire, and they are missing this experience of those ladies. So what they're trying to do now, they employ now like 10 to 15 data scientists who have to capture their experience of those ladies, who did all those forecasts just from their gut feeling. And what they did, in fact, it was judgmental forecast. They looked at the history, they knew what they can expect in January, what they can expect in February, and they did really almost perfect forecasts. So they had many of such ladies, and if they combine the opinions of all those ladies there, we call it a Delphi method. So we combine the experience of many experts in some sense to a single forecast. And it used to be a very good approach, but nowadays we know that all such forecasts, all such opinions, they have some biases. So if you've seen the book of Kahneman about Kahneman diversity, this stuff there, every opinion is linked to some behavioral biases. Maybe something like entering. Entering is very nice bias. So like I have 3 kids, and we have a rule at home that if we have for dinner or for lunch something what is new, their elder kids, they are not allowed to say anything if it is tasty or not. Because as soon as they say it's not tasty, then the smallest child will have some kind of danger. It doesn't matter if she tries that stuff or not, she will have some basic new idea that this stuff is not tasty, and for the next couple of years she's not going to eat that. This is like entering. She has no information, and the first information which she gets is very influential information on for her behavior. So this is kind of entering. So conservatism is very easy. So if you believe in something, it's very difficult to convince someone that it might be wrong, even if there are a lot of proofs, a lot of evidence that the things are really wrong. Wishful thinking, it's about optimism. So we know that we cannot win anything in lottery, or the probability of winning is very small. But people are very super optimistic, and they believe they are going to win, even if the probability is like 10 to the power minus 20 or something like that. Overconfidence is also very, very cool bias. So everyone believes that he is a better driver than all other drivers. So it is a typical example. 80% of the people believe that they are better than average, but just from a mathematical point of view, it can't be true. Recently, we also believe that the events which are more close in the past, they are more influential or more important than more distant events. That's also not really correct. So there should be some historical events which are as important or as relevant as the most recent events. I also like such biases as IKEA bias. So if you build your furniture or your table on your own, you always believe it's better done than if you buy it already constructed or put together. So if you did something on your own, you believe it's better than if someone else did. So it's also a kind of overconfidence linked with IKEA effect. There's also now a Google effect. If you know that something is easy to find on Google, you tend to forget it more quickly, or you don't try to memorize that because you know that it's enough just to type it in Google and you can also noted it by myself that if something is easy to find, I just don't care about memorizing that. Like phone numbers. I used to know all the phone numbers like 20 years ago of all my relatives and friends. Now I don't care about the phone numbers because I know they are my values. So it's also kind of a bias which is linked to their decision